First off, thanks for coming to our informational meeting for the notice of intent to file a waste discharge license, or what we're calling is excess processed water discharge. So we're going to each introduce ourselves here, and then we'll get right into it.
I'm Roger Krause. I'm the general manager of the Water District.
I'm Robbie Bickford. I'm the water quality manager for KWD.
And I'm Max Kenny. I'm the project engineer for the Kennebec Water District.
So one thing I will say is if you do have questions during this presentation, this is kind of formal but a little bit informal. Feel free to put your hand up and ask them throughout the presentation. We will have a chance for questions at the end as well, so if you feel more comfortable waiting to the end, you can do that as well.
All right, and one thing I'll say is if anyone hasn't had a tour of our facility here at some time in the past, or wants another one, or hasn't had one, contact Robbie afterwards, and he can set up a time to get a tour. So probably not today, but at another day, he'd be available to give a tour if you're interested in how the process flows here. In actuality, we have a little schematic here we'll show you here, but it's much more interesting walking through the plant than actually seeing it on the screen here. So just a little bit about the Kennebec Water District. We took over a water company that really started in 1881. We formed as the Water District legislatively was formed in 1899. That was a creation of the Water District. It's consumer owned, so the customers of the water system own the utility. We have a 10-member elected board. We have one of our trustees, Frank Richards, here with us today. He lives in Vassalboro, and so he's the Vassalboro representative. So we have 10 elected representatives who manage, as the governance body for the Water District. And that was formed in 1899. It wasn't 10 members then, but it took until 1904 for the Water District to actually take over the assets of the private water company. And then in 1905, we started pulling water from China Lake. We were using the Messalonskee Stream prior to that. Water quality issues in the Messalonskee Stream, typhoid outbreaks, lots of bad things going on there. So to improve water quality, and so one of the great things about China Lake, elevation-wise, it's higher than Waterville, so it flows by gravity. Flowed by gravity all the way to our pump station on Western Avenue in Waterville, and then it was distributed throughout the system there. I will say one other thing on the supply, source of supply, China Lake. We started in 1905. A few years later, we started buying up some of the shoreline along the West Basin to protect water quality. We planted thousands of trees to restore. There was a lot of agricultural activity around the lake there, so planting a lot of trees there, just a way to preserve that land and reduce the amount of development near the shore. And so that's been started in 1909. The trustees of the Water District decided that they needed to protect the West Basin from development. So great vision, great decisions that were made back then. So we've got 2 parallel transmission mains that deliver the water from here into town. So that's 8.5 miles each. So about 17 or 18 miles of transmission main, and then about 154 miles of distribution main. After we get to the pump station, it's distributed throughout Waterville, Winslow, Fairfield, Benton, and Vassalboro. And so that's 154 miles of buried pipe that we maintain. 653 hydrants, 12,000 valves, and just over 9,000 customers. That's our makeup of our system. We've got 28 positions, employees, 27 currently, about to have a 28th. Employees, we got 5 employees here, and the rest are in town at our new facility at 131 Drummond Avenue.
Cool.
So I'm going to turn that time to Roger.
All right, thank you. So Roger did mention that water started flowing from China Lake in 1904, and up until 1993, when this treatment plant was built, it flowed via gravity all the way down there, and this treatment plant was built in response to Safe Drinking Water Act regulations, where surface water treatment or surface water sources all needed to be filtered. It does still pull water directly from China Lake, the West Basin, about a mile in that direction by the Cates Farm. This treatment plant has a maximum output of 12 million gallons per day. So that's quite a lot of water. Currently, due to different demands and reduction of usage in town, we're producing about 3.3 up to 4 million gallons per day. So that equals about 1 billion gallons of water a year. So 1 to 1.3 billion gallons of water. So a ton of water is produced through this treatment plant. And there's 5 people at this site, myself and 4 operators. So this treatment plant obviously has produced a lot of great water, making 1 billion gallons a year that meet and exceed federal regulations. Why are we suggesting this modification to a discharge for the outlet stream? So really there's a couple different reasons, 2 main reasons. The first one is to meet EPA drinking water guidelines. So as part of that Safe Drinking Water Act and subsequently a filter backwash recycle rule, the EPA recommends between 2 and 10% reuse. So currently, we'll talk about it, the water that's going into the lagoon from the excess processed water is currently being taken off and recycled to the start of the plant, whereas refiltered to make drinking water. And so again, about 2 to 10% is the EPA guideline for that. Currently, KWD uses between 13 and 18% reuse. So that would mean, 82% of the water is coming from China Lake, and then 18% is coming from this excess processed water. And like I said, it's currently being reused, and we are meeting and exceeding any of the EPA guidelines currently. The other main reason is for consistency of treatment. So any fluctuations in water quality, flow of water, does have an effect on our treatment process, where we have to adjust the chemicals, adjust pumping rates, that kind of thing. And currently, you can see our reuse rate changes between 13 and 18%. So sometimes we'll be running 600 gallons per minute of reuse water, other times we'll be running none. And there are adjustments that need to be made for that. So for the more consistent and streamlined a process is, the better the water can be. So this would really allow us to dial in our treatment process and produce the highest quality water. And potentially, due to that, being really more streamlined and more consistent, we could potentially reduce the amount of chemicals that we're using to treat the water, saving the ratepayers some funding, some money. So the ratepayers, we do serve Vassalboro, so the town here. So this is a little schematic of our treatment process as well as our distribution system. A couple of things I'd like to point out here is the big black box on the top right there is actually what's occurring at this facility. So we have China Lake, the water comes in, coagulation, flocculation occurs, so the particles combine together, we filter them out. Over time, those filters become plugged, just like any filter you'd see, and we have to clean the particulate matter that we've taken out of the lake off the filters, and that's what this excess processed water is being used for. We are backwashing and flushing those filters, getting those particles that we've taken off from the raw water from China Lake, and then we are sending them to our lagoons, which you can see out the window behind Roger there. So in the lagoons that it's called flock, and basically the particles that have combined together, most of them sink to the bottom of the lagoon, and then the top of the water is taken, the excess processed water is taken off and being reused and refiltered to make drinking water. The proposal that we're talking about here today is to, instead of recycling it back to the start of the plant, is to discharge it to the outlet stream. We're talking about 250 gallons per minute. We'll talk about a little bit more later what that actually means, but it's not a super significant amount of water, but that's our process in a nutshell. Any questions about our current process? Okay. So I wanted to talk quickly about the permitting process, because this is a very well-regulated process. It's something that happens nationwide and statewide. It's a really rigorous DEP process. So DEP is highly involved. All of our results, our application is all being sent to state DEP to review, and under the Federal Clean Water Act, approved, hopefully. So we are actually applying for 2 different licenses or permits. We're applying for a waste discharge license, and then Maine Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. I know that's a mouthful, so I wrote up the acronyms there. But we're applying for these 2 permits basically under one application to DEP. It is regulated by a department of DEP, and then we actually started this process fairly recently in the fall of 2023 with collecting a lot of samples. So we collected a lot of different samples, sent them to certified labs, the state lab down in Augusta, as well as Northeast Lab right here in Winslow. So we actually sampled for all of these different parameters over the course of about a month or so. And we actually sampled for a lot of these multiple times. So these results were all sent to DEP for review, to talk about, to come up with a game plan, kind of what does our water look like, is there a potential for this? And realistically, there were two items that came back as being different than the outlet stream. So the two that were different is there was a little bit of increased particulate matter, so organic and inorganic particulates, and then aluminum was the other one that was slightly elevated compared to what's already going down the outlet stream, the baseline of the outlet stream. So right now we are in the infancy process of this entire thing. We are putting out notice of intent to file an application. That's where we're at right now. We're going to be submitting our application on or about the 18th, so in about 6 days or so. And again, that's in that notice of intent to file. But once we get that permit, we still have a long ways to go. There's a lot of other permits that need to be obtained and a lot of other information that needs to be brought out there. We have to obtain a shoreline zoning permit from the town of Vassalboro, so we'll be going to the planning board, talking about our process for that. We're actually attending a select board meeting tomorrow night to have this information as well. We have a DEP permit by rule process, so that's for erosion control. Any work in the shoreline zone is a permit by rule or a different permit. So DEP is going to be hopefully granting us that permit. We have an Army Corps of Engineers permit, so that's reviewing our process, reviewing our plans, and looking at Atlantic salmon that in the Kennebec River, looking at the impact on that. And then we have a cultural and environmental review that's currently underway that we'll need to get approval for from the state. One thing to note that I like to bring up as well is once these permits are granted, as part of the permitting process, there are water quality monitoring parameters that will need to be monitored and reported to DEP. So once we have the permit to potentially discharge, we're looking to discharge this amount, there's expectations of reporting flow, different levels of contaminants, different levels of what we're discharging to the stream. So that's all monitored and reviewed, and there's set parameters that we need to stay within. And again, really, really highly regulated by the DEP.
Is that done on an annual basis? Or
Monthly.
Semi-annual? Monthly.
Yep, so there's monthly reports that have to be filed to the DEP, as well as if there's any exceedances, again, just like drinking water, right? We file a monthly report to the drinking water program in this case, but, and then if there's something that goes haywire, there's potentially violations and a whole other process that goes down, but we're gonna be putting in our preliminary design, we have remote monitoring that's gonna be monitoring multiple times per minute, providing the data to our operators where they can make adjustments, shut things down. So it's going to be real-time monitoring, not just grabbing a sample from once a day. It's going to be continuous. So we're going to get into the meat and potatoes here of kind of why most of you are here, is what are the impacts on the outlet stream from what we're looking to do here. So the first one I want to hammer home is the flow rates that we're looking at here for our discharge are extremely low compared to the water that's going down the outlet stream. So the average flow between 2012 and 2019 was the data that I had available. The average flow is 28,000 gallons per minute going down the outlet stream. And with our discharge being 250 gallons per minute, our proposed discharge, that makes it about 1%, slightly less than 1% of the outlet stream flow. The minimum of the outlet stream that's regulated, right? So this is a stream that's has flow limits, high and low. The low amount is about 4,500 gallons per minute, and that's 10 cubic feet per second. So you might hear it talked about in different ways. That's the minimum flow at the outlet stream. And at the minimum flow, we're still at 5% of the total flow down the outlet stream at 250 gallons per minute. So it makes up a very small percentage of the total flow of the stream. And during the springtime, it's much higher than that, probably double. So we're up to 50,000 gallons per minute probably in the springtime down the other stream. So one thing, obviously the flow volume is extremely low, so it wouldn't degrade it won't lower the classification of the outlet stream, so the water quality classification. Another thing I talked about was the contaminants. So what's in this water, right? So it is very similar to the baseline of the outlet stream. I wrote that in my letter. I've already said it here. There were two items that were elevated compared to the baseline. It was the naturally occurring organic and inorganic particles, particulates. So again, that's what's filtered off, all already from China Lake, where the majority settles out in the lagoons and is taken off to the landfill. So it's scraped up and taken off to the landfill later. So the water, effluent, excess processed water, contains very little of that. However, it is higher than the baseline of the outlet stream. And the other one is aluminum, which is slightly higher. The reason why there is aluminum in there is because we use aluminum sulfate, otherwise known as alum, in the treatment process. And what it does is it allows the organic and inorganic natural particles to stick together, so we actually can filter them out, because they're very small to begin with. And through this process of adding alum, it sticks together. So our numbers, we tested for it 4 different times. They range between 0.18 milligrams per liter or ppm and 0.31 milligrams per liter or ppm. So there's a little bit of a range there depending on a number of different factors. What I will draw your attention to here is I took a couple samples so you guys can see kind of what we're dealing with. One sample here is China Lake, so this is water directly from China Lake, and you can see very clean. There's some particles in there. But this water on your left here is actually the excess processed water. So this is the water that we're looking to discharge. So after the meeting, feel free to come and take a look at these two bottles here. Very similar. So aluminum, that's again the big thing that we're talking about here, kind of what the only major difference to the baseline is. Aluminum is a naturally occurring element, and it's actually the most common metal on Earth. So it is really commonly occurring. It is used as a coagulant. I already talked about that. So it's used to stick the particles in China Lake together so we can filter them out. So there is an effect to aquatic life to high levels of aluminum. High levels of aluminum can affect the aquatic life's ability to regulate ions and breathe. So higher levels could affect the invertebrates mostly, a lot of times, in the outlet stream. But in our case here, the World Health Organization has a limit of 0.9 milligrams per liter. So there is no drinking water limit for the US EPA. So drinking water in the United States, there's no health limit. So that's kind of important to note. But the World Health Organization has a limit of 0.9 milligrams per liter. And again, we're about a third, even at our highest level, we're at about a third of the maximum level for the World Health Organization for drinking water.
Yeah, right. Can I just jump in there? That it's important. That's just to give a sort of sense of scale here. I mean, this is the processed water, excess processed water is not potable water. Right. And these are potable waters. The 0.9 milligrams per liter is potable water standard. But just to give you a sense of the magnitude of, World Health Organization says it's acceptable to drink water that has aluminum up to 0.9 milligrams per liter. This discharge has levels, about a third or less than that. So just to give a sense of that. This is not what, no one is drinking the processed water, no one's drinking from the stream, obviously, but we just want to give you a sense of the scale there on the contaminant levels of the aluminum.
Yeah, and this water is currently being reused to make drinking water. It's one thing to remember is this water is being pulled out of the lagoon and refiltered to produce potable drinking water.
So this is about drinking water then, but the fish aren't really, they're drinking it, but they're bathing in it and getting it in other ways. Has there been any studies about, levels of aluminum in fish and any effects on them?
Yeah, as I said, the elevated levels of aluminum can affect the fish's ability, multiple species, ability to breathe, so to regulate ions. And there is limits to what could be in the outlet stream. It gets really complicated based on pH and a number of different factors. So that is regulated by the DEP. So the DEP has a chronic, aluminum limit that KWD will not be able to exceed as part of this discharge, and that'll regulate, our testing as well as the amount of water we can put out and the level of aluminum that can be in it. So that's all regulated by DEP. It does get extremely complicated for, again, oxygen levels and organic materials in the stream, but we kind of wanted to keep it simpler, and again, it's worked through by the DEP to set the limit.
I think it's important. This is the DEP process, really.
Right.
There is a flow component, but what heavy metals are going into the stream is really important to the DEP, and aluminum is the only one. And so they're going to be looking at our permit and saying, okay, what's an acceptable level of aluminum to protect the biota in the stream, you know, to not have adverse impacts on the microscopic organisms and the invertebrates and the fish and all of those things. They've got a process of evaluating that, and so they won't give us a permit if they feel like there's an adverse impact on the biota.
Thank you. All right, any other questions on this?
Like, you'll be testing the water here, and then will the stream be tested as well?
So the stream has already been tested. There's a baseline known for the stream
Mhm.
for all of these parameters due to other discharge permits that were previously in use.
Mm.
So at this time, we're not being asked to test the stream because there's already a baseline known. But we would be testing this per the DEP's requirement. So again, as part of this process, they're looking at all of our results and they're saying you need to test for these different things this amount of times per month and then report it to us. And that's again the process is the DEP is going to be looking at all these different factors and providing us with, you know, if you discharge at 250 and your aluminum stays below this number, it will have no impact on the aquatic life in the stream. So that's again part of the process. Yeah.
Hi. I have horses on Willow Street, and we have a water system where we have water that comes out of the stream that goes right into my 100-gallon tub that my horses eat out of, they drink out of daily.
Hmm?
And it says here, on how does aluminum affect horses? It says colics, ulcers, lack of bone density, stiffness, periodic lameness, fractures, weight loss, and condition. So I'm going to have possible excess aluminum in my water that my horses are drinking. And that kind of alarms me because you guys are looking at fish, but I have animals that drink that water every single day.
Right. So horses are mammals, just like humans.
Yeah.
Right. And so the World Health Organization was looking at human health, and they're saying that if the aluminum level stays below 0.9 milligrams per liter, then there's no impact on human health. So you wouldn't, you know, again, our levels are 0.31 milligrams per liter, and it makes up about 5% of the outlet stream. And again, the World Health Organization says 0.9.
So where does it all go now, the discharge? Like, you guys are going to be where have you been putting it up to now?
Yeah, so it gets reused to make drinking water.
Okay.
So the water's pulled off the lagoon, the same water, same exact water.
So, I mean, you're going to be putting it into the outlet stream, but where is it now? Like, where does it go now? You guys scrape it up somewhere and dump it somewhere, or?
So yeah, so like I said, the current excess processed water that has this increased amount of aluminum gets refiltered through our treatment process. And as part of that treatment process, it gets sent as drinking water down to Waterville. So in our finished water, there's non-detect for aluminum, so it's below the 0.18 milligrams per liter in our finished water. But again, it gets bound to the organic and inorganic materials that we're filtering out, which again then get settled out to the bottom of this lagoon, scraped out, and sent to the landfill.
First of all, the World Health Organization, that doesn't impress me because everything went through with COVID. So I don't know what's up with them as far as their knowledge goes, but as far as taking this and putting it into the outlet stream where people swim, the kids, fish, we got alewives finally coming up, it just, to me, doesn't sound good.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't sound good.
Interject. So, important.
It's a pollutant. It's
Yeah,
like
oh, absolutely, it's a contaminant.
It's a contaminant.
It's a contaminant. That's not, I don't care, that's not healthy for anybody or anything.
Yeah.
It
So-
shouldn't be going in the water system.
Right, so on the previous, one of the previous slides about flow rates, so even at the low flow, our discharge is only 5% of the total flow. So for 95 gallons of water that goes by, we add 5 gallons. And so this, and the 95 gallons of water that's going by has no detectable levels of aluminum. And so the 5 gallons that we add has somewhere between 0.18 and 0.31 milligrams per liter. So you won't be able, after it mixes in with the 95 gallons, you won't be able to detect, there's not a detection method to identify there's any aluminum present because it becomes so low. And so
Is it possible that more aluminum could get in there that you guys can't catch right away?
Oh,
And that
no.
could cause some
No.
considerable damage to,
Oh, absolutely not. Our process works, I mean, at first it goes out to the lagoons. I mean, but our process is very refined. I mean, we've been doing this for 30-plus years here.
how about children swimming? Will it affect their skin or if they get in their eyes or
Yeah.
their mouths?
So again,
It's a swim area, basically.
oh, absolutely, yeah, and that should be, that's something to be thinking about here.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about, if we had 195 gallons of water and 5 gallons was added from our process, you couldn't measure any difference in the amount of aluminum
I
in
mean,
the
Yellen
stream.
Stream isn't a big area. It's very narrow and it goes downstream. It's not a
Right.
huge acres and acres and acres and acres and acres of water like China Lake. It's generally a
Right, but it is,
small area.
28,000 is the average outflow gallons per minute, or 4,500. So it is still a very small percentage of the water going into it. And the water that we're looking to discharge does have a very low concentration. So again, like Roger's saying, is if you took a sample of the China Lake outlet stream,
Let me ask you a question. If you were near that pipe that's gonna be discharging this into the area, would you take a bowl of that and have your dog drink it? Would you say,
I mean,
"Here,
I
dog,
wouldn't
go
have my
drink
dog
this up,
drink-
water."
yeah, I wouldn't have my
Right out
dog
of that
drink
pipe,
water
Right
from-
out of that pipe that's gonna be going in, would you put a bowl of water and tell your dog, here's some water to drink? Seriously.
So there's a lot of other things in there I wouldn't have my dog drink. The like beaver
Maybe lice.
beaver feces and
Exactly, that's
you
what
know.
I'm saying, this whole pollutant thing. this
No, no,
is
no,
not-
the
Oh, no.
water
It's not
going
good
down
for
the outlet
anybody.
stream, like before that, the
Mhm.
outfall that I'm talking about. But, again, the aluminum level is so far below the regulated limits.
So would you have your dog drink the water?
If aluminum was the only thing in it, if it was treated water and the level of aluminum was 0.31, yes, I would drink it. If it was potable water
Mhm.
that someone put, filtered water that had met all the other regulations and it was 0.31. That, again, because it's below the limit that's been set through many other scientific research. So,
So when the sanitary district was putting all their lines in, you were offered to hook on, but you didn't. I think it's a good place to go. That way, we're not piling up stuff and accumulating more stuff. It's a step backwards as far as I see it. Send it to the filtering plant. You have a pipeline, so you have butter, the pump's there. I don't know why you're not pumping into that. And then send it to Waterville. That's where it goes, let them take care of it. Be a lot easier for you. You wouldn't have to worry about all this stuff that you need to be approved, and whether it's the government or the state, and then dealing with the chemicals.
Wouldn't that increase though our water bill? Because you have to pay for stuff that's going through the sanitary district.
Yeah.
If you have to pay for that, then the Kennebec Water District's paying for it, which means all of us ratepayers have to pay through our bills with the Kennebec Water District, because that's an expensive way, I would think, to try to, sending basically, water that's meeting all the regulations, sending it as if it's dirty water. That's pretty, then you're filtering it again, you're going through the whole process again. So it would end up coming back to us, I think, at a higher.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I appreciate you bringing that up, because we did look at this evaluation of what's the cost of getting rid of this excess water. And this is the low-cost solution for us, and that saves our ratepayers' dollars. And so that's our goal, is saving ratepayers' dollars. But obviously, our goal is to follow the DEP regulatory guidelines or regulatory requirements on no adverse impact on the stream as well. I mean, that's critical. Can't happen without that.
Right.
But our goal is, how do we best use the resources of our ratepayers to treat water and deliver safe water? And so this was the best solution for us.
Can you compare numbers, how much it costs to, in other words, do you have any sense of how much money that would save the ratepayers?
yes, we did, or saving for this exact process, we did an assessment of the sanitary sewer, both when it was put in, as well as in its current state, and it's not a feasible option. The amount of water to be sending down to that would exceed the volume of the sanitary sewer. I think there was some sizing stuff, so we'd have to upsize some of the current sewer that was just put in to do this, as well as, I said briefly that we would potentially make the process more streamlined, more consistent, so there would be a reduction in chemical costs, so it would save the ratepayers some money potentially, but the other thing to consider is that we are looking to meet an EPA guideline. Right? Currently, we don't meet that EPA guideline. We're able to filter it out and still meet all the water guidelines, but the filter backwash rule states between 2 and 10% reuse water, and we're above that. So we're looking to become in compliance with that.
I'm sorry,
guideline.
I missed how we're not meeting the EPA guideline exactly.
Yes, so the filter backwash rule is a really large rule that was put out by the EPA in the mid-90s. You know more about it than I do. And it's not an enforceable number, but in that document, there's guidance that recommends between 2 and 10% reuse. We are between 13 and 18% reuse. So we're above the recommendation of the EPA for reuse water. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's time for questions at the end. I'm going to pass it off to Max to talk about some of the preliminary engineering that's been done.
Yeah, so thanks, Robbie. Our proposed construction timeline, obviously this isn't going to start tomorrow, this discharge. We started, like Robbie had mentioned, discussions with the DEP around this potential discharge back in 2023. We're hoping to get the permitting and preliminary design done by the end of spring, early summer timeframe, which would allow us to go into final design of the actual infrastructure that's required for this discharge and apply for funding to find a funding source to help us construct this by the fall of 2024. Once we get into 2025, we're hoping early spring, late winter, we are going out to bid to find a contractor to partner with on this project. And then construction, we anticipate being in the summer of 2025 when the stream flows are the lowest, so we're impacting the stream as little as possible with the construction work that will have to take place on the edge of the water. And then hoping to be up and running by the fall of 2025. So that's our construction timeline.
Do you have to work with other state agencies?
We do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like DOT and...
Yes, we do have to, there is a road crossing as part of this project, obviously, to get from the lagoons here to the stream on the other side of the street. We are working with DOT right now, kind of trying to understand their paving schedule for Main Street here's paving project. It's possible that if the paving project does happen this year, we would have to install the pipeline across the road this year, but that would just be within the public right of way. We would not look to extend that down towards the stream at all this year.
So they just opened up an Eagle Park right across the street from you, and you're putting your pipes right in front of them. And sometimes you can see 10, 12 eagles sitting there. They're all dipping into the ellwise when you have your ellwise run. So how sensitive is an eagle to this stuff? Because you got a lot of them here. All the birds of prey sit right here.
Yeah, as part of the DEP process, DEP looks at impacts to aquatic life as well as non-aquatic life. Comment that you had made about people swimming in the stream. They actually do look at whole body impact for this water.
Well, aluminum it kills the gills of the fish and invertebrates like snails, and it will kill them. Like, I managed aquatic departments at local pet stores in Augusta for like over 15 years. Aluminum's just not good for invertebrates at all. Shrimp, snails, anything like that. So if the fish, if it kills their gills, and I don't know how the fish will absorb the aluminum in their bodies, but if an eagle gets a fish and eats it, how does that affect him? I mean, aluminum's just not good for anybody.
Yeah, and the DEP does look at that. They look at what amount of aluminum can be uptaken by fish without having a long-term impact on them. And then they look at what quantity of aluminum can kind of go through that food chain process.
It just doesn't sound good. It just doesn't sound good.
So
they
they
I mean, why are we
regulate based
ruining
upon
something
that.
now when there's not been a problem? It's like we're just throwing caution to the wind when we're putting this out there to the critters all the way down the stream, all the way into the Kennebec, all the way out to the ocean. I mean, I don't know why is this happening now? Like, why all of a sudden is this going on? Like, does this have to be done like this, or why now?
Yeah, I mean, to Robbie's
No.
point before, really, this is an opportunity we found to improve how we treat the water here with our process and reduce.
Yeah,
that
it sounds
risk.
great for the people drinking the water, but what about everything that's out living, where this stuff's being dumped out?
Yeah, and that's where the
That doesn't
DEP
sound-
process, the engineers and technicians from, scientists from the state will look at all of these numbers, and that's their process. They do
It's gonna have to
this.
be seriously monitored, big time, because all these levels have to be exactly where they're supposed to be. But I'll tell you, I don't know,
Right.
it just.
The
doesn't sound
DEP
good.
gives permits to a lot of entities across the state for discharge into water bodies across the state. So this is not some new process. This is a process that they
Is
have.
this a money-saving thing? Are you guys trying to save money by doing it like this? Is this a money-saving thing for the state
It's
to
a-
do it like this?
Oh, not for the
Not
state.
for the state.
I
But
mean,
for
this is,
here?
well, it's
Is it
about
to save
improving
money by
water.
putting it in the
Save
outlet
money.
stream?
It's about improving water quality for our customers while.
Saving money.
While saving money, finding a solution that is the lower cost solution.
And then putting yeah, that doesn't make sense. You know what, I'm from Rhode Island. I really thought that Maine was a real, environmental, healthy state, conscious on everything. I'm just really surprised to hear that they would be thinking of doing something like this. I wouldn't think it would happen in Maine.
Can that be recycled? Instead of dumping it in the stream, recycle that water?
That's what they're
That's what
doing
we're
now.
doing
That's what we do now.
That's what
is
they
we
do
But
work-
now.
for the discharge, but you can't recycle it to, say, go back in the lagoons or whatever.
Keep using it?
So
Keep reusing
Yeah,
it.
so the current process is that we are reusing the water, from the lagoon. So this excess processed water is currently being brought back into the treatment plant, refiltered to make potable water that goes to downtown Waterloo. What we're looking to do here is to make the process more consistent by discharging at a slower flow rate into the outlet stream. So right now, we bring water reuse in, again, between 13 and 18%, and the flow rate really varies. So there is slight chemistry differences. Again, we talked about it, slightly increased particulate matter, inorganic particulates, that cause the treatment process to have to be adjusted. So by eliminating or greatly reducing the amount of reuse water, we are making our process more consistent and making, higher quality water. So that's really what we're going after here is that versus, adjusting the reuse amount every, hour or 15 minutes to match the level of the lagoon and then having to make process adjustments to that. It's really making a much more streamlined, consistent process, which ultimately results in better filtration and higher water quality to the people drinking it.
Two questions. So, are you adding anything that would be discharged? In other words, is it just simply pulling from China and then discharging whatever it was that you pulled from China? Or is there anything that would be added to the
Yep.
outlet stream?
Yeah, so that's what we talked about here, is the aluminum.
Yeah.
That's the only
That's the only one.
thing there is the water chemistry is extremely similar to the baseline of the outlet stream. There are slightly elevated levels of organic and inorganic particulates, right? Because that's what's been filtered out. The majority of those settle out, and then the dissolved aluminum, like we've been talking about for a while here, is the only thing that would be considered added that would be detectable. Again, from our extensive testing, that we noticed any difference, any variance between the outlet stream baseline and the water we're looking to discharge.
And why not send it back to where it came from?
China Lake.
Yeah.
So discharging into a water body that isn't flowing and continuously moving does have a lot of other regulations and red tape and a lot of other items here. The water from China Lake eventually works its way down the outlet stream. So again, we're short circuiting, a bit of the stream there. But again, the water from China Lake ultimately does go down the outlet stream. So
Right, and that would also require us to put a pipeline all the way to the lake.
About a
Which would
mile.
be significantly higher cost.
Higher cost.
to
$3 million
discharge.
a mile.
So I mean, that's,
Yeah.
You know, in addition to an increased regulatory process, we would have an increased cost, and there's no benefit because the water that's in the lake is coming down the outlet stream. I mean, it's not, it's the same water that's in the lake is coming out. So I think, you know, really important, I think, is that, again, we're 1% to 5% of the flow in the stream is coming from this discharge. So the aluminum levels of the 0.18 to the 0.3 is what's coming in our discharge. Once it's mixed in the stream, you won't be able to detect the level of aluminum. It'll be what's called below detection limits. And so that there will be no measurable quantities of aluminum in the stream just because it's so low at that point.
Thank you.
Getting towards the infrastructure of this proposed discharge, obviously the water treatment facility is on the west side of Main Street, so we will be installing a pipeline from the water treatment plant across, or down our driveway across Main Street, and then discharging on the bank of the stream. You can see in the photo on the left there that what we're proposing is to have a concrete head wall with some sort of screening structure put at the discharge of the pipe to prevent animals and other critters from going up into the pipeline. We intend to have a riprap channel from the discharge point down to the edge of the stream. We are planning to utilize large riprap as seen in this photo, and the point of that is to further prevent erosion around the edge of the stream. And if for some reason there ever were to be a flood in this area, we would want to make sure that the riprap isn't moved by the increased water flowing through the area. So the larger riprap will stay in place better. A benefit of riprap channels down to the edge of the stream is that the water will be re-aerated as it's going through that riprap, as opposed to a discharge directly under the water. It wouldn't have a chance to re-aerate. So we're hoping that through this process of discharging through the riprap channel, it will provide additional oxygen within the water.
All right. So that is the end of our presentation. There were a number of questions throughout the presentation, but now's an opportunity for anyone that had questions or didn't get a chance to ask them that, you know, anything from what KWD does to the information about the proposed discharge to the construction timeline. Any questions are good questions. We're happy to do our best to answer them.
Yep. So the flow will be here. The brook is a little bit narrower here than it is once it crosses Route 32 and gets even with the Gray Road, then it widens right out wide. So your flow is really slow there. And I can see like that aluminum flowing down is going to stop at that area, and then it's going to build up because that flow there is not like what you got in the little stream. It's 4 times wider. So
yeah. So a couple things. So it is dissolved aluminum. So it's not like chunks of aluminum that are going to settle out if the water slows down. And also, again, once it's mixed up fully, it's going to be at a level below the detection limit. So again, such a small percentage and low concentration, it's not going to concentrate. Aluminum's not like sediments.
Well, it's full of cattails and reeds both sides of it. Mm-hmm. And all the sawmills that used to be up here, they used to cut over the brook. And all the sawdust is down there. So when you pull the plug at the dam, the lower dam, and you can just about fit a canoe in the original stream bed, and you can take your oar and sink it all the way, and it's nothing but sawdust. Mm-hmm. And it looks like mud, looks like the flats. But you flip the top over and it looks like sawdust that was just made yesterday. That whole brook is like that. So because the flow slows down, you got the cattails and reeds, everything collects on that, stops there and stays there. And that's why it's so deep and so thick. The aluminum probably do the same thing. It'll accumulate where the flow, there's no more rushing water. It's going to be slowed down by.
Yeah, so it is dissolved aluminum. So it's not like suspended in the water column like a particulate, and so it would stay in the water column, not settle out due to reduced flow. So it's not like dirt or sawdust where it would stay in suspension with a rapid flow, and once it slows down, drop out. That's some of the process we're doing with the lagoon with the particulate matter is that's dropping out, but the aluminum that we're talking about here would stay in suspension, so it'd stay in the water versus dropping out. Yep. Good
So
concern,
is
though.
aluminum like powder?
No, it's dissolved, so you can't see it. I mean, you know, it's gonna be completely dissolved, it's taken up into the water, you know, so you can think of it as kind of being bound to the water. So it's not gonna be a powder or a
It's like
particle.
dissolved in salt
Yeah.
to the water.
Yep,
You
it is.
you could taste it, but you can't see it. I mean, aluminum you won't be able to taste, but it doesn't come out of solution unless you were to try to evaporate it or something, and then it would concentrate in the bowl or something like that. But other than that, it's just gonna stay in the water and continue flowing all the way to the Kennebec and then to the ocean.
What I keep hearing, I guess, is what I'm understanding is that there's a mismatch here between, you know, when we hear something like aluminum and the stuff you read about, the toxicities of it, you know, it's alarming. But we can also, if we look at it from a point of view of, we put chlorine in our drinking water in order to make it, I don't know if they do use chlorine here.
We do
Yeah.
use free chlorine.
So there's chlorine in most of the places I've lived in cities, they put chlorine in the water, not my well water, obviously, but, and we all know that nobody would drink chlorine, you know, because we know it's
A
toxic.
lot of people filter their
So it used
water
to be here.
with water
Right,
filters.
and so we used to have,
Used to be
right, we
here.
used to have chlorine.
They chlorine
So-
out here, didn't
And so we all
Yeah,
know
we
that
have chlorine
chlorine is,
on site.
it? At the old.
At
police
large
station.
amounts. large amounts of chlorine are bad, but small amounts are needed in order to purify the water. And in this case, we're talking about, I just looked it up to see this level. So we're talking about a level of, for every liter of water, maybe at most 0.3 milligrams. And this one of the European food groups, the US doesn't have really as good a care about the safety of the foods. And the European, which has the strictest ones in the world, says that our weekly tolerance for us to eat it is 50 milligrams a week. And we're only talking about, you know, we're talking like 0.3 milligrams. So it's real, I mean, the toxic levels, we're not even anywhere near the toxic levels, really, when you're talking about the amounts that a horse would drink or something like that, if they were to drink constantly that.
They do drink constantly. I have a 100-gallon tub up
But
there.
they'd have to drink.
That's a lot of water. I got 2 really big horses. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy to know that my horses are drinking water that has something in it that's not good for them, which means I might have to stop using this tub and bring well water from home.
And so then you
because
could check your well water and see what that has in it.
I've got perfect well water. I've got probably the best well water in town, I think. Nice deep well. But I don't think in this day and age, no pollutant of any kind should be put into any water anywhere in this day and age. There's other ways to do this than to dump it in a stream. They're making it fine for people to drink the water from China Lake, but what about everybody else downstream? The kids that play in it, the dogs, the fish. My God, the alewives are coming up by the millions now. What's going to happen when they're up here by the millions and they can't breathe because there's maybe aluminum is affecting them in some kind of way? I mean, that's like a big deal. It took 200 years to get these guys back up here, and now we're going to do this in the outlet stream. I guess I'm just a little basic, down to earth here. I'm just worried about the horses, the kids, the birds, the flies, the butterflies. I'm concerned about it because I see my barn is right there where everybody swims, and there are people swimming in there every day, playing and swimming. And when you know that there's something down the line, 2 miles upstream, that's going to be going into the water, the clean water that it is now. How long did it take to get this water clean eventually after all the years that people can swim in the outlet stream?
Long time.
Yeah, and now here we are, we're gonna be dumping something that's not so bad for everybody, but can be, you know, depends.
I don't know if this is any solace, but
Yes,
to
please
you,
make
but
me feel better.
but I talked to DEP today, and they were saying how if the outlet stream is trashed, they would, you know, just kind of a far-fetched, you know, situation. Let's say if it did cause a negative impact to the stream, they would, you know, they would revisit that, they would look at it, and the permit could be, my understanding is they could basically stop KWD from continuing discharging, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a permitted process that we're monitoring this monthly and reporting to DEP. If there's something out of spec and above the limit where it would cause, detrimental impacts to fish or human contact or the butterflies.
I guess we'll
they
just have to
would-
wait
they
and
would-
see what
They would
happens.
stop that
It's
discharge.
a little
Maybe
too
you
late,
will
it's
find
already
Right.
been contaminated.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
A question regarding the filter process, the cleaning of the filters. Do you physically remove any media or membrane or whatever you do to catch the particulates? Or is that all cleaned through a backwash?
Yes, through the backwash, the increased flow. So
Okay.
we have the filter media that we use, either a polymer-based or carbon, radioactivated carbon. It's different density.
Yeah.
Water flows at a different flow rate. The flock, again, the captured particles are a lower density, so they get taken off with the change of flow.
And that backflow goes into your lagoon?
That backflow goes into the lagoon, where then the water slows down, like Ray said, where the water slows down, that particulate matter then settles out, and then we take and collect that later, and that particulate matter is then taken to the landfill.
Is there such a thing as an oversaturation problem in the lagoon that makes the reuse water not as efficient? Is that something you're struggling with?
No, so our treatment plant was designed for 12 million gallons per day. So it's a really robust process.
Yeah.
We're making between 3 and 4 million gallons a day. So we actually have 2 lagoons. If you look out there, this process was designed to run using both of them. We don't need to, because we're only making a third of the amount of water that we would normally, or our maximum output. So we're only using 1 lagoon, so the concern of it being oversaturated or being over full isn't a concern. Again, we're not looking to modify this process because we have a real issue that we need to go after. We're looking to meet the guidelines and improve water quality. We're already meeting it. We're looking to be better. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and you're testing the discharge water monthly?
So currently we test for different parameters.
Or you would be.
We would be, yeah. So that's all. I don't want to speak out of turn here. That's all regulated by the DEP. So the DEP will be looking at our data as part of this permit application. They will say, in order to maintain your permit, you need to sample for X, Y, and Z 3 times a month, or 5 times a month, or once a month, and then report those values. So I don't want to speak out of turn. It all depends on the level of concentrations and what they determine is adequate monitoring. And again, we will have inline monitoring of a number of different parameters, so continuous. So not collecting a sample, but continuous monitoring for turbidity, which is how cloudy the water is, and a bunch of other items there.
Last question, you have a baseline for the outlet stream. Any long-range sampling for impact, for future impacts?
Yeah, so-
Other than just the discharge?
I'm not sure on that one. Again, DEP has a baseline for the outlet stream due to other permits
Right.
that we compared our data to that baseline. As far as long-term monitoring of the outlet stream, I'm not sure what that looks like. I'm sure that's a DEP water quality question. But again, we would be monitoring our discharge and reporting that, not taking a sample from the outlet stream. Any other questions? Yeah, Aaron?
Are there any other water districts that have applied for and been granted a permit, a similar permit here in the state of Maine that we can kind of look at and see, how, in other words, has this been, as we talk about, you said earlier, state and nationwide, well, who's done this kind of thing, I guess would be my question. So we get an idea of what kind of an impact, if any, it's had.
Yeah, I'm not sure of any water districts with our particular treatment process that's doing this.
Mhm.
However, the process is very similar to any wastewater treatment plant. We're not a wastewater treatment plant, but the permitting process is very similar, where they would be looking at the different levels of contaminants and then setting a limit and then treating for it. So the person you talk to at DEP would be able to.
I asked him that question, actually, he couldn't think of anyone.
Well, water treatment plants that are doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, so again, it's more of a novel, it's not a very common thing.
Mhm.
A lot of water treatment plants are located right in the stream, or on the bank of a river, or I'm sorry, on a bank of a lake. A lot of water districts use wells versus surface water, so there's a lot of different variables here. But as far as a water district looking to discharge, lagoon,
Mhm.
excess processed water.
Nationwide, this hasn't been done anywhere?
I don't know of any, I don't know of any. I mean, I'm sure that there are discharges of similar excess processed water, you know, but as far as exact matches, I'm not aware of any.
Was there talk that weren't you supposed to go to wells?
I'm sorry?
Was there talk that you were supposed to go to wells instead of just drawing out of the lake?
Not that I know of. I mean, China Lake has been the sole source of supply since 1904. I don't know of any. I'm sure that there was some studies done for different reasons in the past, but currently KWD's plan is to remain at China Lake utilizing this treatment plant for many years to come. We put a lot of effort into preserving the water quality of China Lake. You know, my team does that. We're on lake monitoring. You know, we have the land that we manage for the water quality of China Lake, so we put a lot of effort into that. Any other questions?
I just feel like it boils down to money, it's cost. Making it cheap for everybody, but you know, sometimes you gotta pay to have things right. And
Yeah,
I feel like you're riding the edge of the knife.
So everything, you know, it definitely is, you know, one of our values is reasonable rates, right? The Kennebec Water District, we do want to keep our rates reasonable for the ratepayers because we are owned by the ratepayers. We're a quasi-municipal entity. So we definitely do take anything we do, we take that into consideration of cost to the ratepayers, from overtime to installing a new filter process. You know, I had questions about, you know, changing our filter process. What are we doing for the impact on the ratepayers, and we're looking for grants. So anything we do, we definitely take that into consideration. I don't think that we're doing this the cheap way. The cheap way is to do nothing. You know, what we're trying to do is to improve the water quality and improve the process for our ratepayers and make the best water possible. So, I mean, I don't feel that it's cheap. You know, we're not trying to do anything bad. You know, we're looking, going through this process. It is very regulated, very rigorous process, you know, not novel. You know, it isn't the exact process is exact, you know, everything lining up is novel, but the permitting process is federally regulated, Clean Water Act, and it's not a novel process, the permitting process.
So I think the next, you know, our next steps is we're filing the permit next week, and then there's an opportunity to, you know, contact the DP if you want to have comments.
Yep.
What does that process look like?
So in the notice of intent to file, there is a email, phone number, and address to, if you're looking to submit public comment, or, you know, to contact the DEP. In that notice of intent, I believe it's online. Aaron has a copy he can get you. I probably have one here that I can get as well. If you are looking to submit formal comment to DEP, that would be the next step. Like I said, we're looking to submit the application on the 18th. As part of that application, they'll have a little bit more information, basically the information we covered here, some formal documents with that, as well as all the test results. So a lot of data will be going with that. And a copy of that application will be filed with the town office as well. So if you did want to see the formal application with all the data, that is going to be at the town office for your inspection. Or again, contact the DEP at the email, phone number that was provided on that notice of intent to file the waste discharge license.
Are you gonna be at the meeting tomorrow?
We are, yep. Yep, Roger and I will be attending the select board meeting tomorrow. Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, come and do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear it, you can hear our spiel again. Yep. All right, well, great, guys. Thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. And don't hesitate to ask any questions on the way
That
out.
notice is on your website too.